Innovation. You hear the word everywhere you go today. You see it on signs, you hear it in executive communications. It's in most of our organizational value systems. And as executives, we're working hard to try to make sure that our company produces it on a regular basis as a competitive advantage. How would you like to be the senior executive in an organization where this story unfolded? I get an email from a young engineer, a guy that's got IP actively being sold by that company in the market. This is a Fortune 500. In his email, he says to me, "Bob, I was recently at a brainstorming meeting with my boss's boss, and my boss's boss's boss. We were trying to solve a fairly gnarly business problem that had been showing up for us time and time again. So we were brainstorming," he said. He knew better, but what they said they were doing was brainstorming. So after a little bit, he said all we were getting were the same-o, lame-o ideas that we always get. So, Bob, I threw out a wild idea just to loosen people up a little bit. My idea was greeted with Snickers, not the yummy kind. I love the way he writes. A little while later, he said, I did it yet again. The wild idea thrown on the table to loosen everyone up. My idea was greeted by a dirty look from my boss's boss. The third time I did this, tenacious guy he was, just the kind of engineer you want, just the kind of thinker you want. His boss's boss's boss turned to his boss and said, "Can you manage that kid?" He goes on to say, "Is there something that can be done for my organization?" Now, if that was my organization, I'd be embarrassed. But I'd also want to do something to prevent that from ever happening. So how do you do that? Well, you decide that you're going to build a culture of innovation, to go beyond just the communications, to go beyond putting it on a value statement. Now, to do that, it's going to require some effort, and it's going to require new effort. If creating a culture of innovation was an easy thing to do, we would all be doing it. So, working over the last 20 years in this particular area, and following the research of the last 60 years, we've determined that there are really 12 strategic action areas that you have to get yourself involved in. All of them are important, but they're not all equal in weight. There's a graphic I ran across recently that kind of shows that. You see there in the center, this red circle, we'll call that innovation. Around the periphery are all these rectangles. They're different shapes, different sizes. The 12 strategies are much the same. What's required is effort in all 12 areas, but not the same amount of effort. Not the same level of intensity, not the same amount of budget. But the problem is if you leave one of them undone, one of them unattended to, it's going to come and undermine the rest of your efforts. So the trick is to figure out a way to cause action to occur in all key 12 strategic areas. We've written them up. You've got access to that now. It's something that people have wanted us to do for quite some time. We finally bit the bullet and did the work. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. If you choose to go after this in a sustained and an intentional way, if you drive effort in your organization to build this innovation culture, we won't be hearing stories of that kind of misbehavior I opened with, but something more will occur for you that's useful. You see, the other thing that everybody's all hot and bothered about right now, and you hear HR departments all over the world talking about, is levels of engagement. The discretionary time that's available for employees to really put extra effort into their organization, and that's determined by their level of engagement. Here's the fascinating ancillary benefit of creating a culture of innovation. Highly supportive cultures for the creative thinking of the employees of those organizations have incredibly high engagement scores. And the other thing that's interesting about it, should you choose to go down this path, is that when you improve a person's ability to be a good creative problem solver, a good innovator in the organization that they work in, they don't turn that off when they get in their car or on the train or on the bus and go home. They take those skills home to their families and their communities and their volunteer organizations. So what a win-win. You know already that building a culture of innovation is going to be the key to your long-term sustained profitability. What you might not have thought about is that building a culture of innovation is really good for the people in the world that you influence. So get on board, start playing with this, and I think you're going to find it'll be quite fulfilling and quite profitable.